where the real estate world gathers.
NOI. So NOI stands for net operating income. Very important piece of the profit and loss of a financial of a financial statement of a shopping center or any commercial real estate, and for any business for that matter. So when you're looking at within the shopping center space, the NOI, you'll probably find that a lot of asset managers and owners really focus on that. That would be the way you get to NOI is your gross revenue. Actually, if you want to get really technical, it'd be your potential gross revenue, which is what your property could generate in revenue if it was 100% leased, minus your vacancy, so what you have empty, and then that would be your effective gross revenue. But then you take your effective gross revenue, which and that effective gross revenue is the sum of your base rents, your operating expense reimbursements, as well as your miscellaneous income. And then, so all of that, all your income generation, then you would subtract your expenses, and your expenses would be your CAM, your insurance, your real estate tax, your management fees, security, and it could be also non-reimbursable costs, such as professional fees and accounting and legal fees and stuff like that. And so once you take your gross revenue and you subtract your expenses, then you get your net operating income. Before you get to the net operating income, sometimes, especially if the property is 100% leased, they might, just for the appraisal purpose, not for internal, but for like if you're trying to get the property appraised or something, they might also reduce it by a general vacancy factor. And maybe I'll get to that a little bit later. That's maybe more advanced, but gross revenue minus expenses equals net operating income. And if you are doing retail leasing, you are really focused on that gross revenue side, making sure that you get the occupancy high, the rents up, etc. If you are on the operations side, you're really working on that expense part of it, trying to get the expenses as manageable as possible. And if you're on asset management, you're looking at both. So that's a little bit of high level look at NOI. CO, so that stands for Certificate of Occupancy. I'm not sure if that term carries throughout the country, but at least in South Florida, when you lease out to a tenant for your shopping center, they do their build out, their construction, so they have to get a permit, or first I guess they have to get drawings done by the architect, then they have to submit the drawings and get a permit to build, and then once they have the permit, they can do the construction. Once they do the construction, then they get the construction inspected by the municipality to make sure that it was constructed according to what they submitted. And then once they have that approval, they get a certificate of occupancy, which means now that they can go in and use the space for their business. Before then, they're not legally allowed to do so. So a lot of times when you're looking at leases and letters of intent, they might cite the date as when they obtained the certificate of occupancy, or their CO for certain things, like maybe it's a contingency, or maybe it's when the rent starts, etc. So that's what CO stands for. CPI, that stands for Consumer Price Index, and it's essentially a measure of the general inflation of the economy. And I think probably everybody has heard of that by now, because inflation's been a big topic. For a long time in my career, inflation was super low, under 3%, but last few years it's been something that we're paying very close attention to. And Consumer Price Index, there's I think a few indexes, but I'm not exactly sure which one we use, but we use the one that's most popular, and it comes out every month, and you enter the index rate, and you figure out how much you need to increase whatever is tied to that index by CPI. And so the way that it's used typically is that if you have a shopping center lease, oftentimes the rent, your base rent of that shopping center lease or that tenant is the annual increase is tied to CPI somehow. Sometimes it's, you know, a 3% annual increase, but no less than CPI. So if CPI is like 5%, then it's 5%. And sometimes so that's a floor of 3%, but sometimes there's a ceiling as well, of maybe 10% or something like that. But essentially, if CPI is running, and again, that's inflation, so if CPI is running 5% or 6% or whatever, that just means that the cost of like everything that's being measured in the CPI formula is going up by that much. So oftentimes that's rent, that's food, that's gas, that's you know, materials, etc. So that's a little bit of insight on how we use CPI, Consumer Price Index. LOC, and that stands for Letter of Credit. So how do you use letter of credit and when does it come in? You don't find it that often nowadays. I feel that what it does is it securitizes the lease. So when you're negotiating a proposal or a letter of intent with a tenant, especially a local tenant, you get to the part where you say, hey, I want a personal guarantee for the entire term that you're there, you know, 5-10 years. And they say, no, I don't want to do a personal guarantee. I want to do only a corporate guarantee. You look at the corporation and maybe it was only started 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe it's a brand new LLC that's only for that location. And you say, no, I need that personal guarantee, and they just won't give it. So one option would be to do a letter of credit, which is basically a bank letter of credit, which basically you have the tenant go to their bank, and the bank issues the landlord a letter of credit saying that, hey, if the tenant defaults on the lease, the landlord can pull the letter of credit from the bank, which is very good because the landlord will be able to pull it, since the bank's essentially saying that it'll pay the money if certain conditions happen. The downside of it is two things. One is that there is a cost associated with having a letter of credit by the tenant, so they'll have to pay for that cost. Secondly is that the money, so let's just say the letter of credit's for $100,000, which might be worth 6 to 12 months of rent. That letter of credit, that $100,000 is tied up in the tenant's account typically, so meaning that it's essentially frozen for as long as the letter of credit exists. And also the letter of credit's usually for a 1-year term, so you have to make sure there's a mechanism that forces them to renew it every year for as long as you agree to have it. And then there's also a mechanism on the landlord side to make sure that you're checking to see that that has been renewed. So because if it hasn't been renewed, now you don't have a letter of credit, you don't have a personal guarantee, and you're kind of out of luck. So those are some nuances there. You can also address the guarantee issue by 6-month security deposit or 12-month security deposit. That's very popular as well. All right, thank you. This is all part of my retail leasing proficiency test series, the answer key series. The retail leasing proficiency test is over on my LinkedIn. It's in one of my articles, and so this is the YouTube version of the answer key. I hope you enjoyed. Like and subscribe. My name's Hue Chen. I've been in commercial real estate for 25 years and trying to share some of my experience and knowledge.
Much more. Tenant mix like brush to paint. It's part instinct, part constraint. It's science and art in every square. Find the fit and values there.